Alleluia, 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 alleluia. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. As Jesus came down from the mountain with Peter, James, John, and approached the other disciples, they saw a large crowd around them and scribes arguing with them. Immediately on seeing him, the whole crowd was utterly amazed. They ran up to him and greeted him. He asked them, "What are you arguing about with them?" Someone from the crowd answered him, "Teacher, I have brought to you my son, possessed by a mute spirit. Wherever it seizes him, it throws him down. He foams at the mouth, grinds his teeth, and becomes rigid. I asked your disciples to drive it out, but they were unable to do so." He said to them in reply, "O faithless generation, how long will I be with you? How long will I endure you? Bring him to me." And they brought the boy to him. And when he saw him, the spirit immediately threw the boy into convulsions. And as he fell to the ground, he began to roll around and foam at the mouth. Then he questioned his father, "How long has this been happening to him?" He replied, "Since childhood. It has often thrown him into fire and into water to kill him. But if you can do anything, have compassion on us and help us." Jesus said to him, "If you can, everything is possible to one who has faith." Then the boy's father cried out, "I do believe, help my unbelief." Jesus, on seeing a crowd rapidly gathering, rebuked the unclean spirit and said to him, "Mute and deaf spirit, I command you, come out of him and never enter him again." Shouting and throwing the boy into convulsions, it came out. It became like a corpse, which caused many to say he is dead. But Jesus took him by the hand, raised him, and he stood up. And when he entered the house, his disciples asked him in private, "Why could we not drive the spirit out?" He said to them, "This kind can only come out through prayer." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So in today's first reading, we begin going through the book of Sirach, and we hear the lines, "All wisdom comes from the Lord." Wisdom comes from the Lord. I was thinking about this word wisdom this morning. Pope John Paul II, St. John Paul the Great, as some call him, he had an encyclical that he wrote, and it was called Fides et Ratio, which means faith and reason. And one of the things that St. John Paul II called for in that encyclical was he said that our civilization needs to have a return to an education in wisdom. An education in wisdom. A wisdom philosophy, he called it. And it brings up the question, and this is something that he talked about in his encyclical, is, what does wisdom mean? Whether we realize it or not, in our civilization, we no longer place a great emphasis on wisdom. In our modern civilization, one of the things that has been happening is that instead of focusing on wisdom, we are entirely focused on action and activism and power. It basically began in the late 1700s with the French Revolution, and then we have the thinkers like Karl Marx and the like, with people like Friedrich Nietzsche, who basically say that the civilization is just up to whoever has the most power. is to wield control. Karl Marx made it seem like all of history is a war between two opposing parties. And so we have this focus on action and activism, even in education. For the most part, many of our education systems, they're starting to downplay, right, the study of truth and goodness and beauty. And they're focused on practical skills, right, the STEM subjects. It's a focus on what is practical and useful instead of what is wise. And sometimes this can creep into the church as well, that sometimes, again, people can be far too quick to be an activist without fully contemplating or recognizing whether those actions are truly wise. Wisdom comes from the Lord. In order for somebody to be wise, it means they have to be listening, not simply acting. It's a crucial distinction. It's not that activism is wrong or anything like that, but it has to be rooted first in wisdom. And in order to be rooted in wisdom, it means we have to be listening, contemplating, allowing our mind and heart to be formed by truth, goodness, and beauty. One of the things I think is really interesting, just in terms of etymology, is when we talk about in the church, we talk about obedience, right? Obedience to God, obedience to the scriptures, obedience to the church. And the word obedience, it literally means in Latin, from listening. In order to be wise, we first have to be humble enough to listen. And that's a good reminder for all of us, that if we wish to be wise and if we wish to have a return to a culture of wisdom, it means we first have to be contemplatives in the sense that we are listening